Welcome into the Action Network podcast. This is the NFL Roundtable for Week 6. Brendan Glasheen joined by two of our regular co-hosts here on the podcast, our Director of Research and Media, Evan Abrams, and our NFL analyst, Brandon Anderson. We joined you Sunday night, Monday morning for the recap pod, so they said, put these guys together again, give them 36 hours to decompress, rest up, and fire out some more takes from what we saw over the weekend, and also look ahead to NFL Week 6. Now that we've had a chance, Evan, to gather our thoughts, and we'll get to Robert Saleh and the Jets. That is the news of the day. We'll get to that in a bit. Biggest Week 5 takeaway for you is what?
I'm just talking about the Chiefs. I don't think there's really anything else to talk about. The way they're winning, how they're going to be beaten. At this point, back-to-back Super Bowls, start 5-0, only been done one other time in Super Bowl history. I believe it was like the 92 Niners who started 10-0. They're winning in ways I don't think we thought they would. They haven't lost since Christmas last year. I think Spags makes them really, really dangerous because Mahomes just doesn't have to be more than just himself. And he wasn't even really good this year, since I think he had like 6 touchdowns and 5 picks before last night. And then he doesn't throw a touchdown in the game last night. And I think he's 7-3 now in his career when he doesn't throw a touchdown pass. You can continue to go on and on. But I think even looking at their schedule, this is about Kansas City. This is about how someone is going to end up beating them in all the different types of styles they play. And also probably, do they add another piece? And how does that look, considering they're down to almost 0 weapons and they continue to win games? I will say this, after the bye, at San Francisco, at Vegas, and then Monday Night Football against Tampa at home. So see how it continues. That San Francisco game should be interesting, but they've got some extra rest, which should be nice.
Yeah, I think that was their most complete win of the year, where that you saw flashes of all the things they could do, and they still turned it over in the red zone. They made several trips to the red zone, chunk plays wise. Worthy's only going to get better. Kelsey, while he hasn't scored yet, was a factor in that first half. Brandon, what is it for you? Take away from Week 5 now that you've had a chance to let some things digest.
Yeah, I think you're right to go to the Super Bowl. I think you got the wrong team. I think the San Francisco 49ers might miss the playoffs. That's my takeaway from Week 5. I think the 49ers are in serious doubt of making the playoffs. They are 2-3. They are, for me, about a coin flip right now. Make it or miss for the playoffs. And that is crazy. We did not think that about this team coming into the season with all those weapons they have, with all the talent, frankly, with the results we've seen on the field. Like, forget the scoreboard. Just look at the numbers, look at the underlying metrics. This should be a playoff team. This is a pretty good team. They're not quite the juggernaut they were a year ago, but they're still top 10 DVOA team. The offense and defense are still both looking pretty good. But 3 times now, they have given away, I think, a game that they should have won. They definitely should have beat the Cardinals this week. They should have beat the Rams up double digits in the fourth quarter, both games. 0-2 in the division. That's not a great place to be for San Francisco. 2 games they should have won. They beat the Patriots. Hooray. That's the easiest game on the schedule. Like, this was the soft part of the schedule so far. You're supposed to beat the Rams and the Cardinals. Frankly, they probably should beat the Vikings. They had a big swing play there. That game, I think they were maybe slightly the better team. I wrote today, my futures article up this week is a pulse check. Who are the teams sub 500 that still have a pulse? Who's out there and who doesn't have a pulse? The 49ers certainly have a pulse. I think they are in much worse shape, medically speaking, than we are giving credit for right now. Here's the schedule coming up. They go Seattle in Seattle this Thursday. That's a tough one. We talked about that one already. Both teams badly need it. Then, like you said, Evan, the Chiefs next week, coming off their bye week. Cowboys, always a tough one. Not as much for San Fran, but you never know. At Tampa, Seattle again, at Green Bay, at Buffalo. These are not easy games. Like, there's no easy spot on the schedule, even late in the season. Still pretty tough. Chicago, after Caleb Williams has had some time to settle in. The Rams, after they've gotten healthy and get their receivers back. At Miami. All right, well, it's in Miami late in the season, and maybe Tua's back by then. The Lions still waiting in Week 17. There's not an easy game left on the schedule for the 49ers. I think this looks like maybe an 8 or a 9 win team right now. I think you have to be looking at ways to fade the Niners and possibly to miss the playoffs.
Is there anything that you can target right now to put you on the spot, or?
Yeah, so they're plus 150 to miss the playoffs. I do think that there's a slight edge there on the numbers. Again, if I think it's a coin flip, then obviously anything north of plus 100 is a way to do it. I think the way you have to consider directly is how do you feel about Thursday night? We talked about this Thursday night in Seattle. If you like Seattle, and I've been a Seattle guy all season long, if you like them, Seattle's still plus 240 to win the division. Seattle beats San Francisco. The 49ers go 0-3 in the division. Seattle is in the driver's seat from there forward. If you like them at home, if you don't like them, I think you maybe have to wait, and you wait a week and see where it goes. Because the direct way to fade San Fran is not winning the division. And the best way to bet the division is a Seattle home game to put them in parallel. Like, they could be 2-4 facing the Chiefs after that. Like, you're 2-5 on the Super Bowl rematch. You lose to Mahomes. Now what? So I think that's the direct way. Evan, what do you think?
I was going to say an interesting target would be, I guess, their live win total, like in season, is 9.5. But I say to myself, why take under 9.5, and why not just like fade them game to game?
Yeah.
As assuming they're just going to be bigger favorites in some of these. And every time they lose, the public will think they'll win the next week. So there's probably more value in that. I just found that interesting that you did say 8 or 9. It's basically sitting there, but I feel like the week to week is more valuable to us.
Well, and speaking of valuable too, another kind of takeaway with the Niners thing, just to wrap this up here. So we talked a lot about Brock Purdy last year. You guys know that was I had the 50-1 MVP ticket. He was the favorite for one sparkling week, and then Christmas happened and it all went bad. Here's the thing. Brock Purdy, I think, is playing better football this year than he did last year. I think Brock Purdy is more valuable to the 49ers this year than he was last year. Here's the problem. When Brock Purdy is more valuable to the 49ers, Brock Purdy is less valuable relative to the rest of the league. And that's why the 49ers are losing now. They need Brock Purdy to be less valuable to them.
Okay. I see where you're going. Let that sink in for a second, folks. Okay.
Take that one.
Yeah, that's good. It got me thinking for a second. Dogs of 6+ continue their domination unabated, with the trends reversed. Will the trends reverse themselves in week 6? Or will every game post open and close at 3 or 3.5 now? The 2 6-point underdogs this week are the Patriots. They are getting 7 at home against the Texans. There's a third one. The Commanders are getting 6.5 at Baltimore. And the Falcons, the Panthers are 6.5-point home dogs against the Atlanta Falcons. Evan.
Yeah, I had originally said Tampa Bay just in general as like an underdog. They are no longer dogs based off of what happened last night with Derek Carr. They're now road favorites, so toss that out the window. I'll say Carolina, and that also works with the 6-pointer. So not only do we get the dog, but we get the big dog with this trend. Atlanta coming off the emotional game. I don't care if they have additional rest. Carolina looked terrible against Chicago. They won't look that bad again. We know Dalton's better than Bryce. There's all sorts of different things we've seen positive out of Carolina's offense. I feel like 6 is just a little bit much at home.
Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I think all trends are trends until they're not anymore, right? So I want to be careful about too much into this on the the 6+ dogs. Like, it's a small sample. It's going to even out. That's how these things go over time. Looking at these teams, I think the one I've got my eye on right now, the Patriots 7 points at home against the Texans. I think it's just a little too much. I know I just bet against the Texans with the Bills last week. It did not go well for me. I still don't think the Texans measure up to their 4-1 record right now. I still don't feel like they're being treated at this point like they were before the season, and they have been much worse on paper and much worse in actuality than they looked before the season. The offense has not moved the ball that well. It's a lot of 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10. Oh, CJ Stroud did the thing again. So, CJ Stroud's pretty good. Maybe he'll just keep doing the thing. But history says over time, you don't always do the thing. When you're not successful moving the ball, moving the chains, that stuff evens out. Yeah, we're going to talk about ugly unders a little bit later on as well. I think if you like the Patriots in that one, you probably like the Patriots and the under. So that's maybe a double play there, because you certainly don't want the Patriots having to win a shootout against a pretty good Texans defense. You got to hope that the Texans offense doesn't show. That's probably the one I'd be looking at. To me, that's kind of a trap game for Houston to maybe overlook a little bit coming off the big Buffalo win.
CJ Stroud made his not his official debut, but he preseason at New England last year, and the Patriots sandwiched him a couple times. Was not good in that game. Through a pick.
Also, no Nico.
That's when I think folks were questioning if the pick would work for Houston, and of course we found out it did. So,
yeah, Evan,
all
you
right,
said
very good.
no Nico Collins. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I definitely should have said there. Like, I think Nico's been as good as any receiver in the NFL so far this season. Losing him is a big deal. It's no mistake that Houston dominated the first half with Nico, and then when he was out, barely scored in the second half until Josh Allen decided to make sure they scored at the end of the game. But no Nico is a big loss, against Patriots secondary that could be otherwise beatable. So Stephon Diggs season now. Let's see how that trade comes through for them.
Mm-hmm. Every team in the NFC North has a winning record right now. So I think folks were wondering, and we talked about this on Sunday night, that we can't figure out the NFC West. I mean, Brandon's talked about Seattle, but now he's talking about maybe the Niners going under 9 wins. The Rams are banged up. Cardinals are better than I think we expected. I think, Evan, you shared some love with the Cardinals. And both of you were still trying to figure this team out, but the Cardinals are still a developing story, but they're in it. But the NFC North, Vikings, of course, have impressed. Bears back on track. Packers squeeze out a tough victory. And then you've got the Lions. Who ends up on the outside looking in or finishing with a losing record, Evan?
I wanted to say nobody and just said that this division was going to figure out somehow to all finish above 500, even if just a game, just because there really is reasons for that all over the board. Like, they're all talented. They all are better than most of the teams in the NFC. I could see it happening. I have to look at the math to see, what the possibility actually is, since they do face each other a bunch. When you just look at live win totals and kind of where we are now, Chicago is at the bottom in terms of where their win total is sitting for the remainder of the season. I would probably say Chicago is the answer. They do have the toughest remaining schedule. Second toughest remaining schedule is the Lions, and fifth is Green Bay. So it's just the fact that their division is that damn good. But I still think Chicago's probably the one looking out, just because I feel like there's going to be more ups and downs. I think Green Bay kind of went through their downs maybe, and they won those games. And then you look at Minnesota. Live win totals there is 12.5. God, I want to take that under, but they're already 5-0. So it's hard to want to fade them more than just be like, okay, let's go under 12.5. They're still probably going to figure out a way to make the playoffs and, at least top 2 divisions. So I would say Chicago.
Bears live win totals at 7.5, juice to the over at -160. Brandon, how about you? Who ends up on the outside looking in the NFC North or finishing with a losing record?
Yeah, it's got to be Chicago here. I think a key note just on this question in general, we've only had one division game so far in the NFC North. So that's all still coming, and we're going to start racking up losses in a hurry when we get there. It doesn't give you losing records. It gives you 500s, but the losses have to come with the wins there.
Right.
The Bears so far have beaten, hold your breath here, the Titans, the Rams, and the Panthers. Hooray for the Bears being 3-2. Like, they shouldn't have beaten the Titans. We knew that from week 1. That was a complete luck box win. They did fine against the Rams. That game could have gone either way. They clearly won the Bryce Young Bowl against the Panthers. There's a lot of Caleb Williams talk this week, a lot of tweets out there of, the charts of Caleb Williams stats going up, up, up each game, week 1 through 5. Okay, line up the defensive metrics for the same 5 teams over that span. There's a reason Caleb Williams is getting a lot better. He is getting better for sure. You play the Titans to start the season. You play the Texans, good defenses. Now you get to play the Rams and the Panthers. I hope you're better. You should be better. You're playing the Rams and the Panthers. So Chicago goes to London now for the Jaguars. They're favorites there. I don't know. Chicago is the better team than Jacksonville, but it's in London. It's weird. I never like to bet on those sort of games. They still face on their schedule all 6 division games. That's an underdog in all 6 games in all likelihood, as they should be. And they have San Fran and Seattle, and they have Washington. Their easy 4th place game. That's not an easy 4th place game anymore. I think this is a team you want to bet the win total under on. If you'd like them against Jacksonville this week, wait a week and then take it. I wrote about the 2-2 teams last week in my article and had the Bears second to last. They're 3-2 now. I want to fade the team. I just wanted to wait out this Carolina-Jacksonville stretch, but I think the reckoning is coming. I think the 7.5 is probably about where they end up. But hopefully, ideally for me, I skip out on the London game. They beat Jacksonville and go to 4-2. Then we play the under. That's the outcome that I'd prefer here.
The one also, the win total's 8.5 at one book too.
8.5.
So
Okay.
I kind of like under 8.5.
Okay, very good. NFC North off to a good start. Despite McCarthy preseason injury, Jordan Love gets hurt. Who else? And then, turbulence early with Caleb Williams, who is, by the way, plus 300 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Jaden Daniels, you're deserving favorite right now. I think Daniels should be even bigger of a favorite. I think that's a sucker bet to get people to come back in on Williams.
100%.
That's just my take. Robert Saleh was fired moments before we started this record, about an hour or so before we started recording. Second highest name on the board for the first coach fired, behind Doug Peterson. Dennis Allen was also in the mix there. Saints head coach, who we saw last night, just was not creative at all in his game plan against Kansas City. It'll be defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Jeff Ulbrich as the interim head coach in New York. Shout out Joe Gallant, who we have not had on the roundtable yet, but Joe gave this out on our Exotics pod in the preseason. Robert Saleh plus 900 to be the first coach fired. Evan Abrams, your takeaway from this very new news?
I think we had 2 tickets on Saleh in the preseason. It's to win Coach of the Year and to be fired first.
That's right.
And one of them had to hit, and they did. So it was fantastic. Just looking at, I guess, all right, so there's a few ways to look at this. Initially, off the bat, a coach gets fired is usually a good thing for a team. It's a small percentage jump, but it is a jump. The data says 38 teams fired in season since 2003. 22-16 against the spread in their next game. You'd be like, okay, small sample there, except for the fact they're 37% against the spread entering those games, those teams. So it is a decent jump. So you'd be potentially looking at the Jets plus 3 against Buffalo this week, which I think is a good side. I would like it myself, a little bit of a jump there, and I'm not really big on Buffalo, even though coming off a loss. I think going forward, you would probably look at it as a bit of a dead cat bounce, which is the fact that you might see a jump this week, and then you'll probably see the Jets kind of go back to what they were. Rodgers doesn't look right to me. Maybe they had Devontae and things look different, but he looks very old in the pocket. Nothing's really going downfield very much. I don't see a positive there. And you just fired a defensive head coach. I don't know how that's going to help the offensive side of the ball. I will say this, 5th easiest schedule the rest of the way. Kind of nice. But you look directly at their schedule, and I've always thought this with teams, it's a bit messy. It's not all at 1 o'clock. I think the Texans last year played like 16 of 17 games in that 1 p.m. window. It's nice to have that consistency. The Jets are Monday night, Sunday night, at New England, Thursday night. You get the point, and it's been like that the whole way of the season because of their popularity. I just don't think it helps them. So that's my assessment.
Win total 8.5. Look, Brandon, look at all those marquee games to get Aaron Rodgers back in the MVP discussion. He'll overcome the coach being fired. Does this fix? Forget the MVP thing. You were high on the Jets though altogether, and we cautioned you that the coaching could get in the way. Now Hackett's still there. Sal is gone. Does this fix anything, and does it fix your soul and how you feel about the Jets going forward?
Yeah, you said the magic word, Hackett. I could not have refreshed my Twitter timeline more this morning. We saw the Robert Saleh news, and I was like, Nathaniel Hackett, is he fired? Is he fired? Please, God, is he not the interim coach? Please tell me he's not the interim coach. We didn't get the interim coach there, but he apparently is still around calling plays. I guess because Aaron Rodgers is doing everything over there for this team. So, of course, why would he get rid of his buddy? Nathaniel Hackett's the problem. Robert Saleh is not a great coach anyways, as far as the head coach responsibilities. Great with the defense. Sure. Jeff Ulbrich will be fine with the defense. They'll still be really good. I had the words dead cat bounce here in my notes as well. Definitely unlucky for Buffalo. They're coming off 2 losses, and now you get this kind of tough spot in New York Monday night. Like that's not a great bounce for Buffalo here. I think actually 2 things. Number one, I like that we're all wearing black today. Like we came for the funeral. So I think this is the funeral for Robert Saleh. I'm not sure it's not still the funeral for the Jets. Like, I just feel like I was wrong on this team. The Rodgers MVP play was as much a narrative plus team play as anything. He was never going to have these like crazy stats. It was always going to be Rodgers wins in New York. That's the angle. At 2-3, I want to tweet out the Undertaker gif, right? Of like, we're back in play. I think that our ticket that I was ready to rip up is back, but I'm not ready to go buy more Aaron Rodgers stock at this point. I do think he has played fine. I don't think he's played great. I don't think he's been an MVP. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has been the problem. The offense, the scheme has not helped. The head coaching has not helped. The lack of weapons and creativity there has not helped. That's not an excuse for Rodgers. He needs to be better too. That's what they're paying him to do. That's on the quarterback. I think he's still there. The limitations he has, but the throws he can make in a real offense with some real weapons and some better scheming. Like, again, we talked about this Sunday night. Minnesota, if you switch the quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers would be 5-0 in Minnesota also, and he'd be hitting these wide open receivers, getting schemed up. He's not getting those. He's throwing these 3-yard quick checkdown sort of passes instead. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So last thing here to me, we mentioned this briefly on Sunday. Robert Saleh, Jets, they're playing the Bills. If the Jets win that game, New York is tied for the division lead, even after the start. Miami is 2-3. Miami has had a disaster start. Miami is terrible in every metric, but they have a bye week now. They have 2 pretty easy games against the Colts and the Cardinals, and then Tua comes back. This might secretly be Miami news. Like, this might be a Miami Undertaker gif as well. I wrote them in the Pulse check too. I don't think that they are dead and buried as much as we make them right now.
Miami Dolphins plus 600 to come out of the AFC East. Interesting. Undertaker gifts across the board, but it might be the Dolphins. Okay, we do this basically every week. We do this now on Roundtable, which is, if you're new to the program, it's our group therapy session. And Evan, I'm glad you brought up the against the spread numbers with teams after the coach gets fired. I totally forgot you kept that data because I didn't think it was going to happen this soon in the NFL. We're week 6. It's not snowing out yet, and it's not that cold, and yet we're talking about a coach getting fired already.
I mean, to be fair, those owners hate losing in London, it seems. I think it's like the 3rd time that's happened. Those long flights back, not great.
So this next segment, we do this every week. Which low under do we like best? Houston, New England at 37.5. Pittsburgh, Vegas, 36.5. And Brandon gave this out on the recap pod on Sunday night, Monday morning. Chargers, Broncos is already down 2 more points to 35.5. Evan, any of those that you like right now?
I'll say I kind of like all of them except for Pittsburgh, Vegas. I somehow just believe that 36.5 will get eclipsed because one side of the field, well, they both turn it over a lot. No matter who's a quarterback for the Raiders, I'm not trusting of. And the last 2 or 3 weeks, Fields has had at least one oh my God play, which you assume will happen against that Vegas team. So I'm a little scared of that one. I would say either of those other totals would be good for me. Maybe I like Chargers, Denver better, but no Nico. The way New England plays, the kind of rut I would say Stroud is in, 37.5 seems good to me. And Denver unders at home, plus the bye with Harbaugh and the running scheme he's going with. They're just, lack of possessions, lack of offense. Both those unders felt right.
Brandon, is there a cutoff point on playing the under in Chargers, Broncos?
I mean, there is and there isn't. Like, hopefully you played the hot read and got the 37. That's the last key number going down. So that's part of why we grabbed the hot read. But as we've said, when we do these ugly unders on the best bets episode, once you go this low, you can't go low enough. Like, the numbers can't go down low enough for the books to set it. We had our mine shaft hit last week. We talked about that with the Chargers, Broncos under. Obviously, if we think it can go 30 and under, then we still like it at 35 and below. So I don't know you need to rush and play anymore. Maybe you wait and we get a little bit of a buyback on the other side. You might get it back to 36.5 still. I think 37 is gone. Texans under, we talked about that with the Patriots. I think if you like that under, playing the Patriots down a touchdown there, so touchdown's worth a lot if it goes under 37. Pittsburgh Vegas is a classic Brandon bet, right? We've been taking the Tomlin road unders all season. It's indoors. Indoor numbers, when they're this low, you've got to be careful with. And it's 36.5. You missed the key number there. I think that's a wait for me. Like, I don't love a lot of scoring there, but I think unless we get to 37, I can't be playing that one just yet. You know, give me like a 40, I'd be all over it. But, you know, you got to watch the numbers on these two.
Yeah, that's what worries me about the Patriots spot. I know the game is at home for them, but when they played the Jets Thursday night, that number ended up going. Did that game go over? Maybe it didn't go over. Now that I think about it, Jets Patriots.
I think it goes under.
Jets Patriots did go under. Jets Patriots at Jets. When Aaron Rodgers
forgot to score that game.
Yeah, I don't think they scored.
That's when Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh looked like a great match, and Rodgers MVP was a thing.
We had a good night.
24-3. My fault. Yeah.
The night to
27 points. Yeah, the Jets had a good night offensively. Patriots did not. This one's fun. I like this topic. Pick the same city MLB NFL combo you like the best. MLB postseason rolling on. That National League side, we did Payoff Pitch this morning. Check out Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast. With myself, Sean Zarillo, BJ Cunningham, Tanner McGrath. You guys like any of these? So, for example, Yankees, Jets to win the whole thing. Both teams to win their respective leagues. 106-1. Yankees, Giants, Mets, Jets, Chiefs, Royals. They were pumping up the Royals last night on the Monday Night Football broadcast. Lions, Tigers. Evan?
Yeah, so to be clear, it's Super Bowl, World Series. It's winning it all.
Yes.
I would probably pass on Browns Guardians at 1,400-1, even though I decided to toss that in there. Probably not going to be the one I do. I'm going to hit Lions Tigers. Oh my. I think it's an interesting one. I think it's fun. It's 155-1 at the moment. I think the Lions will make the playoffs. I think they more likely would have a home game, especially if Brandon's San Francisco thing goes the way it does. And the Tigers feel like they're on a run. They're in the middle of a series against the Guardians, and they've got a little magic to them. Especially, I like a team coming back. They were like 10 games back a few weeks to go in the regular season and made kind of a historic run here. So I will ride the train. I'll go Detroit.
Shortest one here, Brandon, is the Eagles and the Phillies at 85-1. Well, I guess Chiefs Royals 83-1. You like anything here? I have never heard Brandon Anderson talk about baseball. I'm actually fascinated by this.
I literally wrote in my notes, blah, blah, baseball bets. Who cares? These are my actual notes. Happy birthday to my friend Kyle, by the way. He's the biggest baseball friend that I have. There's no world where I'm betting a Philadelphia double. That's just a ticket on the world to end. So I can't give that ticket out because that's not going to happen. I think of the options here, I think Lions Tigers probably makes the most sense. I basically take a baseball bet on whoever has the longest odds. I think that the 3 and 5 game series are ridiculous, and we need like 15 game series to get real winners. That's my baseball thoughts. Here's my actual pick. I'm going off the board. I have an actual pick here, kind of. Vikings, Lynx, 70-1. Give me the Vikings Lynx combo, Minnesota championship.
Oh,
that's
Brandon,
fun.
I'm doing it to your Connecticut Sun. Game 5 tonight. We love a ticket that can be dead before the folks listen tomorrow. Vikings Lynx, 70-1. That's the championship ticket you want.
What about Yankees, Jets, Liberty? Let's do that.
Ugh, New York.
I did not expect to get into WNBA with you two. Never mind baseball from Brandon Anderson. Okay, that was fun. I'm ready to move on. Speaking of those Vikings, they are favored to win the number 1 seed in the NFC at plus 200. After them, you've got the Lions, same division. We discussed the over 500 component in the NFC North. Eagles, Commanders at 8-1. Falcons, Cowboys. There are the Niners at 16-1. Packers 16-1. What's the bet to play right now, Evan, on who wins the 1 seed in the NFC?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I LOL'd at San Francisco just because I kind of knew the direction Brandon was headed, and I was kind of interested in fading them as well. But 18-1 area is pretty crazy for that San Francisco team. I wouldn't blame you for sprinkling on that. I think Detroit is probably the right answer, just sitting at 2 at plus 450. I think you can get them at 5-1 at some spots. They still have the nice indoor schedule. I think they're going to beat Dallas this week, and that's a road game where they're favored. And I think you'll kind of move on with that journey. So I would probably pick Detroit. I will say I wish Philly was a little shorter. They're a little longer. They're 8-1 right now. They've got the easiest remaining schedule in the NFC. They're coming off the bye. I think you get maybe on the right track here, and they still, they've been down their two best targets. You just haven't seen like the real Philly team. So assuming health kind of goes one way, I think Philly was an interesting bet, but that's probably the way I'd look at the board.
Brandon, you mentioned this before, how we've only had one divisional game in the NFC North, and the Vikings are 1-0 against the Packers. Falcons 2-0 in their division. The Cardinals are 2-0 in their division. They're 100-1 to be the NFC number 1 seed. Where's your mind go here?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just want to play the right number, this is not a homer pick. You guys know how I fade the Vikings typically. I think 200 plus 200 for Minnesota is probably a slight value here, to be honest. FTN has Minnesota 41% to be the 1 seed, so that would imply 33%. So I think that there's a little bit of value there. I don't need it, but they are 5-0, and there's only one other team in the NFC with even 1 loss, and that's Washington, who has a rookie quarterback and a brutal second half schedule. So effectively, assuming it's not Washington, your bet here is a direct bet against the Vikings 2 games out. You're giving them a 2-game head start with, 3 months to go. So I want a team that's going to play the Vikings. I want a team that can beat the Vikings and have the head-to-head. Now, the Lions could do that, but they'd have to sweep the Vikings. I'm going back to a team that I've liked all season, even though I don't love the spot Thursday night. Seattle 30-1. I picked that before the season. I like Seattle. I know they have not looked good the last couple of weeks. They've had injuries on defense. They forgot how to tackle, but they're playing with a lot of second-string guys there. I'm not going to love them Thursday night. I will be very nervous Thursday night. But if they can get through at home in a win against the San Fran team that keeps giving games away, Seattle still is effectively, they're tied with all those other teams for next best. They're 11th in odds on this board. Seattle is a better team than 11th in the NFC. That's a ridiculous number to me. And week 16, Seattle hosting Minnesota. If they can stay the course, if Minnesota loses a few games by then, you win that game. That's a 1.5 game. Like in soccer, we call that a 6-pointer, right? Where you take the game, they get the loss, and you get the head-to-head tie break. I think Seattle would have a shot to steal the 1 seed. Minnesota still goes Green Bay at Detroit to end the season after that game. So if you can start the downfall at the end of the season, Green Bay and Detroit might finish it off, and Seattle can kind of backdoor through there with the tie break. 30-1.
That Seattle Minnesota game is so good. That's a great call for that bet, because it just shouldn't be 30-1 with that game so late in the season. Even if it's close, you get a real advantage.
And
if nothing else, if it's close and you're on that ticket, Minnesota at Seattle, Minnesota's probably a short favorite or even an underdog, and you can probably get a little bit of a hedge in there and get some of your money back, if nothing else.
And just to tie it in a bow, I brought up the Cardinals. So the Cardinals, after their bye week 11 bye, they go at Seattle, at Minnesota, home Seattle. That's their stretch. And those 2 Seattle games are their next 2 division games at 2-0 in the division. That's interesting. 100-1, and they're 2-0. I know they're 2-3, but they're 2-0 in the division. They go at Green Bay this week. Chargers, Dolphins, Bears. The Jets are sliding. I don't know. I kind of like the Cardinals look at 100-1.
I wrote about the Cardinals too. They're one of my 5 teams on the pulse check today. Here's my problem with the Cardinals. We talked about their defense, and let's be fair, they just shut out the 49ers in the entire second half. They shut out the Lions in the second half, I believe, a few weeks ago. Those are as good of offenses as we know in the NFL. Credit where it's due. Upcoming, they play, like, Brandon, look at the schedule again, but don't tell me the teams. Read me the quarterbacks that the Seahawks play, the next, 5 or 6 quarterbacks.
The Seahawks or the Cardinals?
Sorry, the Cardinals. Who do the Cardinals play at quarterback the next, 6 matchups?
Okay, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert. We don't know about Tua. Could be Tua week 8. Caleb Williams, Aaron Rodgers. Then they hit the bye.
Yeah, so to me, that's the problem. Is I think the Cardinals' offense is the right bet for 100-1 that they could do it. The defense is still the defense that's not quite good enough, and you're playing Love and Rodgers and these good quarterbacks, even Caleb Williams by that point of the season against this defense. Look, we saw Caleb Williams against Carolina and against the Rams. I don't think the defense is going to be good enough. To me, Arizona is a team that has caught my eye. I liked them before the season. I want to play them, like Evan said, they're a week-to-week play for me. Like they're the feisty underdog. I would even say I like the Packers. They play the Packers this week. That Cardinals offense can win that game. In Lambeau, doesn't matter. They're good enough to win the game. I think you play Arizona week to week. You take the long money line like you maybe could have against the Niners this week. I don't think they can do it every week and get there to the 1 seed especially. I don't even think that they're particularly alive for the playoffs. So I think the 1 seed's a little too far. It is a feisty, fun team, but I think you got to pick your matchups and be aware that at some point the defense is still going to be the defense.
All right. Well, I'll just burn it up then. Very good. I think that's all the time we have today. Evan Abrams, our Director of Research and Media at Action Network. Keep a lookout for his written work, Action Network app, actionnetwork.com. Brandon Anderson also has his latest article up as well at Action Network, actionnetwork.com. That concludes the Week 6 NFL Roundtable. I'm Brendan Glasheen. We will join you again. Brandon and I will join you Thursday afternoon. We record Friday morning, first thing, NFL Best Bets for Week 6. Best Bets episode coming your way Friday morning. Next on the Action Network podcast, be sure to check out Chris Raybon and Stuckey for their NFL Week 6 betting preview, including the Sunday six-pack that drops this Thursday morning. Thanks for listening to the Action Network podcast. We'll talk to you next time.